I've settled on a stencil that for right now, I'm going to, for right now, just curves around Cheryl my elephant's ear. It's a large feather stencil, as you can see. I've chalked it out, and I don't know if I'll show you the my progress, but I've done a little bit of her headdress here. But I'm just working right now on her ear. Now I am using, let me just show you here, I am using a variegated thread, YLI Machine Quilting 100% cotton thread. It's sort of, this thread is sort of like a purple to hot pink to red variegated thread. I quite like it. I actually was trying to use my my sulky, and it was shredding, and I changed my needle, I did everything, and it wasn't working. I quite like the sulky better because it had a bit of a sheen, but this is a stronger thread and it's quite nice. I've used this before, and sometimes machines are picky with threads, and it's doing it nicely. So as you can see, I have, let me see if I can get a bit closer here. I can't really, the tripod's in my way. But I've chalked my stencil, and I'm just free motion quilting. Now, I do want to try to do this as best I can, and going back on the lines. This stencil isn't necessarily for continual line stitching, so I have to go back on my feather line here. Now there is a way, again, I've seen it, that you can bump back on your feather and not have to go back on your feather, but I'm okay. I'm doing pretty good. I'm concentrating pretty good. As you can see, my thread is going from pinks. Let me stop here because I have to shush it up. I always, when you're free motion quilting, you always have to make sure it's nice and loose around you. You can stop with the needle down and collect yourself and where you're going to go. I'm quilting my elephant here, and as you can see from the back, coming back here, I've pin basted it like I was showing you, and I was showing you how I was free motion quilting. And I quite like the fact that it's fairly heavily, I've just done one ear, and her headdress, it's fairly heavily quilted. And if you were following along on some of the other free motion quilting, you see all of these now sort of pulls. Well, they're not going to be there because quilting, free motion quilting, obviously takes up a lot of space on your quilt. It shrinks your quilt actually with all of those stitches. So I'm not worried about that. I think I'm just going to do lines across there, and that will sort of shrink that also, my background. So I'm not worried about that even if it looks alarming. But I've done her ear with my stencils that I was showing you. I've done different color threads. I've done a paler pink, I've done a variegated, and I've done her eye just slightly geometric. The eye, let me just show you. Hold on. Oops, I'm sorry about that. I wanted to show you the actual pattern. I came over to the pattern, and I saw her eye here, her two eyes, and I figured out it's this unit here, and I wanted to sort of emphasize that unit there for her eyes, and so I did that in like a geometric stitching that way. But her ears are nice and feather stitched, but from a distance you can't see it. She's still bold as anything, and her colors pop out a lot, but up close you see the detail of the quilting and her headdress, the sort of feather headdress. Now I've just done this area over here, but I was talking to Eliot, and again I was looking at exactly where her trunk is, and her trunk comes out this unit here. This unit here sort of, oh here, this unit here sort of squares off, sort of comes out, and that's over here. That's this unit here. So I'm going to emphasize here her trunk. And I knew I was showing you a stencil that I had, but I don't think I'm going to be using that. The more it evolves, I think I might just do a, oh excuse me, excuse me, a sort of straight stitch across her trunk, and maybe just sort of emphasize this bit in here, or maybe do a little curly in these bits here. I just wanted to show you the back of my quilt and the quilting, the feather quilting that I've done. I'm using the sulky thread, which was not working well in the top needle, but it's working beautifully in my bobbin. And it's this, it's sort of a variegated. You can't tell, it looks like it's orange, but it's like an orange pink. And it's the actual, actually it's the one I did. It's the one I used to applique her onto this thread here. It's this orange to pink to red, which I satin stitched, which worked beautifully. But for quilting, for doing my free motion quilt, it's not working all that great. So yeah, so the back's going to look real pretty. Okay, here I am in my sewing room working on this elephant, and I've quilted the ears, and here's my son Eliot trying to help me. Hey, there's Eliot trying to help me to decide to do something. I've not...
Well, Mom, look, if you take a look at what I'm doing, you see, this is approximately on the horizon, right here. And I'm going to use these two safety pins, because this safety pin is in the center, and this safety pin is in the center right here, because that's about the center of where the sky would be perspective-wise. And what we're going to do is I'm going to thread this through. I'm going to thread this string on through both eyelets of these safety pins.
I have no clue what he's doing, folks.
Just watch. Just
okay.
watch. Just
but
watch.
What I asked Eliot to help me with is how I'm going to finish quilting my elephant. I've done some ears. I'm going to do the trunk, but how I was going to do the background. Okay. And Eliot had the idea of radiating the sun. Let me move this light. Radiating lines out, continuing around the quilt. Somehow.
So if you look, I'm gonna.
Why are you doing that?
Tying a knot.
Yeah, but why don't you just do it with the?
Just be patient, Mom. Just be patient.
Okay.
So I'm gonna tie a knot, and then.
So I tied a knot, and
and this is going to be. Where's some scissors? I just need any scissors. I don't need like.
My red cord. I've had tons of red cord. My red cord.
So.
Yeah.
Pull this down a little bit.
Okay.
Pull this down a little bit to where you want it to be. And using the yardstick.
Why couldn't you just use the yardstick?
Because this will be, I can go right the way to the corner and the yardstick's not long enough. But the yardstick will be long enough for me to go for, I mean, you could use really any ruler for this, but I'll go like this. Okay, so that's I want it to start here. I want this is the horizon, not this part here. So I want it to be. Okay, so all right.
Yeah, like 1 inch.
So let's see. So we'll put the first piece of tape on.
Okay, he's putting painter's tape on. If you followed last year's block party, to do a straight line, you do painter's tape. I use painter's tape. So we're doing painter's tape, and then I'll stitch. Which side? Where will I stitch?
So
I'll stitch here.
You'll still stitch on the top line of every single one.
The top line of every. You saw how Eliot was just marking my quilt, how I'm going to be doing these sun rays radiating out from behind my elephant. So what I'm doing is, if you are going to ever be working with painter's tape, what you want to do is work with it not scrunched into, as much as you can, not scrunched into the throat of your machine, because it will start to come off. I pretty much put this down. The beauty of painter's tape is obviously the way that it can come right off very easily, but without leaving a residue or anything like that. So I love painter's tape, but it can, if you're messing around with it, it can come off of your fabric. So what you want to be careful is, if you're ever using it, is to make sure it's not scrunched up. So what I'm doing now is, Eliot had the idea, why don't I, instead of going between it, go on either side of my painter's tape, which I've already done. Now for these rays, I have a variegated, it's like a, well, I have two spools of thread actually. It's a sulky. It's a rayon, and it's going from an orange to a yellow. So instead of doing orange and then yellow, I'm just doing this variegated. As you know, I like variegated thread. This is just a straight stitch. And as you can see, I'm stitching very close to my painter's tape. Obviously not going on top of it. Just stitching and stitching right off my quilt. So I'm going on either side. So my stitches, my rays of sun, Eliot thought would be make it a little bit more interesting, will be staggered, will be large and then small. Now I don't do a back stitch, I just sort of hold my fabric, and then it does sort of a knotted stitch. I'm just doing on either side. And as you can see, it'll just push the fabric right along. I don't have a walking foot, as you know. It just pushes my fabric right along. Come back, take my threads out. And I'll just continue doing this. And, whoops, on that side, making sure that my quilt is nice and loose right underneath. Hold that. My tape. I'm still working on Cheryl. I'm quilting her. And as you can see, I've done my sunshine rays that I was working on and above her head, but I haven't done over there. And I usually don't quilt a background, but I wanted to sort this background out. So I did one half of it because I had quilted her ears and her trunk. Now I'm quilting her legs. I wanted to show you how I'm quilting her trunk. I sort of almost even outlined her trunk to make it sort of pop. And as you can see, I've done it sort of like in a wavy stitch. I didn't stencil anything. Eliot said, just make it look like wrinkles, like a trunk would be wrinkled. This part here, this is where my guide is for going up to her rays. So I haven't done that. I haven't taken that piece off. So I've done her legs, as you can see. I've done her legs more angular, more vertical. Her back leg is here, coming down to here, to these toes here. And then her front legs are these ones here, horizontally. My horizontal lines. And when you see it from a distance, you can tell that's her front legs, and then these are her back legs. And I'm just working on doing the quilting for her other leg over here. I have not done this. I have to figure out how I'm going to do her tusks. I'm not quite sure. Eliot had an idea. I didn't love it. Maybe I should listen to him. And of course, then I'm going to be doing my black just lines right across. Oh, I have to do her tail. I completely forgot that. How am I going to do her tail? I don't know. So I'm here. So I've done my, I've actually sewn, let me bring this up here. I've sewn down with a free motion quilting stitch. I've sewn down the images here. You can't even see that, my silhouette. But I've sewn that down, and I've sewn the birds down with a free motion quilting stitch. So they're all lovely and stitched down. And I have stitched I have stitched her down on the satin stitch. I've stitched it on both sides of that satin stitch. I've really stitched her down. And as you can see, this quilt has been quilted about every ½ inch or so across the entire quilt, every ½ inch to inch. But there's a little place over here. Where is it? Oh, there's a little space over here that's not quilted at all. And I'm just going to come back. I've quilted her eyes geometrically, and I've quilted the trunk quite heavily in this wrinkled look. I'm going to come back, and I'm just going to echo some of those feathers just to fill that in right there. I didn't stitch in the ditch a lot, but on some of the areas I did. I mean, I would have been stitching in the ditch a million, you know, it would have taken me forever. That wasn't necessary because all my feather quilting and everything. But just in a few places, I'm going to stitch down. If it's just to make it lay a little bit better. Like I said, I don't know how I'm going to stitch, I don't know how I'm going to quilt the trunks. I have to be real careful there because they really stand out. But, and I don't know if I'm going to quilt her toes. I might just leave them. Just might leave those toes. I don't know. And I have to do that whole side. But that won't be as much as that side because that's a much bigger side. So when I do my yardstick and my painter's tape, it's just a few stitches. But I've done all the top, my sunbursts and her headdress and her ears. But as I said, I wanted the body of the quilt to be more what would be just more a bit angular, and let the ears do the justice. And from a distance, you can't even see it. I like that. I am going to be putting, let me just show you. Where can I do it? Oh, I don't know where it is. Let me just show you. Oh, where's it? Here we go. Here we go. Eliot's like, put a white dot. I'm just using a pin. Put a white dot. There's a white pin. Here's another one. Put a white dot or a bead or something in her eye. Yeah, just a little bit. I don't know if that's where I'm going to put it though. But he said it just adds a little tiny bit more life to her. So I'm going to just probably sew a little bead. We'll have to get the placement right on her eye. But that's the look. I said it's not going to use it. Maybe I'll use a pin. Nah, I can't use a pin. So anyway, so that's that. My back is so cool because it really does look like you can't really see, but it really is like a whole cloth quilt with all the feather quilting on it. And then there's her trunk. So you are going to really see the elephant. You're really, really going to see her when she's all done on the back of this quilt from the my free motion quilting. So yeah, my sun rays are there. I have to do them. There they are up there. I have to do them over on the other side. And there's like I said, there's the outline of her all the way around. Yeah. I'm real thrilled the way it's turning out. Lots of free motion quilting, and help from my Eliot. He didn't help me sew it, but he helped me design it. And yeah, he's done a real good job. So I'm just going to finish up. I'm just going to finish up here. And then I'm just going to finish over here, stitch this down. I haven't even touched it over there. Clean it up again with my tape. That cleans up so beautifully with a bit of shipping tape, packing tape. It gets away all of these fuzzies. It just cleans this black up so nice because it gets so stinking fuzzy. It really does. And then I'll bind it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to bind it. Oh, no, I have to put a hanging sleeve on the back, don't I? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So I have some extra, so I have to put a hanging sleeve over here. I have, oh, excuse my mess, I have some more of the fabric. So I'll make a nice wide hanging sleeve for the top back of the quilt. Because a quilt always looks so much different when it's laying down and then when it's vertical, you know, like it just looks so different. She's very pretty laying down, but she's really quite magnificent when she's up. And looking through the viewfinder here, I quite like the angular bits of her leg. with all of the prettiness up around her ears, like a girl would have. But she's just very, very subtle down here. I like the trunk. I'm glad I chose not to do a stencil in there, and just, Eliot said, make the trunk look fairly realistic. Again, I'll do that when that's all done. But the trunk, I did a sort of a wavy stitch. Just a free motion quilted wavy stitch. Yeah, all these little bits I got to tidy all this up, pull it all out, and get all of the fuzzies off. So yeah, so hopefully next time you will see her completely done. Okay, I've finished quilting my elephant here with all of my stitches, and I'll show you in a minute. Eliot doesn't want to be filmed, but we had a but Eliot's here helping me. I was really debating how to quilt my tusks, because as you know, when you quilt everything firmly, it shrinks. Well, now the last thing that I have are my tusks, which are all sort of proud. And I was thinking, do I do a zigzag stitch? Do I do a round stitch? How do I do these? And Eliot had the idea, why don't we stuff them and just keep them like plain white, but just a little bit proud, like a trapunto. And we're putting a little bit after the fact. I've never done trapunto, which is like a stuffing, but we're putting a fiber fill inside. I opened up this edge here, and I'm going to stitch it down. Yeah, I'm going to hand stitch that down, real tiny, tiny stitches. So Eliot made the trunk, as you can see, proud of the rest of the body. So it's just plain. We are not stitching that at all. We're not stitching the trunk at all. We managed to get that right into the yeah, right there. So we used a spoon, we used a yardstick, we used a coat hanger. But yeah, so we're not quilting this. We just managed to get the stuffing in, and I'm gonna hand stitch that right there. So we're just gonna do the other one. I finished quilting my quilt, which I'll show you in a minute, or you'll have seen. I've just put the hanging sleeve on the back of it. I put a really nice wide hanging sleeve on this one. What I do is I just turn this over. This is about maybe 5 inches of hanging sleeve doubled, and then I just sort of when I go to hand, I'm going to hand stitch it down. I just sort of make it a little bit, not real tight there, just a little bit. I know people do tucks and people do pleats and stuff. I just sort of do it like that. So a nice pole can go in the middle of it, like that. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to sort out my binding, and oh, pardon me. If you remember, I had gotten this ombre fabric here, which is going from the light yellow to the darker yellow to orange. And I thought on the top of my quilt, on the 3 sides that are the bright orange and the yellow, I think I'm going to use this binding and just clean up that edge there. And then on the black, I'm going to use black binding. But for this, whoops, I shifted it. For this quilt, for this binding, I usually always use 2 1/4 inches for my binding. But I think for this one, I want quite a lot of my binding to show, because it's the ombre and it's the yellow to the orange. Instead of the small 1/4 inch, I want a little bit wider. So a lot of people use 2 1/2 inch binding anyway. So I'm going to see how this works. This is my handy dandy Fiskars ruler here. Love my ruler, my ruler cutter. So I'm going to make my binding 2 1/2 inches. So this is going to just go on the top of it, and then my black will go around the black. So I'm going to make this, and I'll see how that looks. So I don't know how much I need. I always cut a little bit more. 45, yeah, maybe four of them. Yeah, I think that'll do. Maybe I'll do 5 of them. Now, let me see. I should measure it. 1, 2, yeah, that'll do. 4 of them will do. So yeah, so now I'm going to cut my, I'm going to put them together, and then I'm going to cut my black out of the black. Yeah, and then attach my bindings together. Okay, folks, I just want you to see something that you will rarely ever see me do. My quilt is finished, and I'm hand stitching, I'm hand sewing the hanging sleeve on the back. I've just made it out of the same orange. I've attached it into the binding at the top here. It's a double folded hanging sleeve, and I'm having to hand sew this down. As you know, I don't love to hand sew at all, but there's really no way to get around. There's really no way to get around it. I've finished it. I finished my quilt. I just have to do two more things. I'm going to be putting hand stitching them. I'm going to be putting two little pearl beads on her eyes. It's not like an, I said to Eliot, I'm like, is that like an iris? Like, which way is she looking? He goes, no, it's a highlight. It's a highlight. That little twinkle in her eye. So that's what I have left to do. Yeah, everything's done. I will go get my tape, and I'll clean this black up, get all the lint away. Oh look, I've done a squared off corner, you people. I didn't round my corners. This is a real wall hanging, although it could be a quilt. It is a quilt. But I'm making it as a wall hanging, obviously. I don't know, you need a big wall to hang this thing up. So yeah, so I'm hand sewing my hanging sleeve on the back, and I just wanted to show you people that I hate doing it, but I can do it. And then when I finish the eyes, that'll be the end of it. That will be the end of my quilt, and you will have seen it. This will be the last thing I'm doing on my elephant abstractions, but you will have seen it and all of the steps of my quilting it. I hope I didn't bore you, because as I said in the very beginning of this process, it wasn't a tutorial, obviously. It was just me putting my camera up, doing something. And I've gotten such lovely comments. A lot of you people really enjoyed, as you said, my thought process, because I do talk a lot. I talk to myself, and I'm like, oh, what do I do? I couldn't have done it without my Eliot. He's a creative force in my life, and two heads are better than one. So yeah, so I'm hand sewing, folks. There you go. My quilt is done. You'll have seen it, and there you go. Oh, what's my next project? I'm going to take a rest. Okay, folks. Thanks. See ya.